for her senior capstone project on fermented foods, the art of fermented foods, and her guide as Food is Medicine. So before I dive into today's topic, I want to tell you a little bit more about Becca. This session is being recorded, and the interview will be about 20 minutes long, followed by her doing a live demonstration of kombucha making, and then we're going to have a question and answer period. So please be sure to put any of your questions in the chat box, and we will be sure to hopefully get to all of those. So Becca is a senior interdisciplinary studies student at Plymouth State University, studying marketing for integrative health with a minor in Spanish. Becca spent a month of her junior year getting practical experience and credit on a mushroom farm in Oregon, and 14 months in Boulder, Colorado, studying online through Plymouth State. During her time traveling, she received practical credit for volunteering at the Telluride Mushroom Festival and attending the Good Medicine Plant Confluence. She is passionate about wild foods and using one's local flora and fungi as their main sources of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. This past year, she was the keynote speaker on mushrooms for a New Hampshire-based homeschool program. She completed her, while completing her studies, Becca also was completing very impactful work on campus. She wrote for The Clock, the PSU school newspaper. She worked as the admissions ambassador and student CPLC participant in the CoLab, helping faculty members understand new and open approaches to pedagogical learning structures in the classroom and helping fellow interdisciplinary study students design their majors. So that is awesome. Such an accomplishment, and it's amazing. You're going to be graduating and going off in just a few weeks. So let's dive into today's topic. So before we get into any of the real deep questions, I just have a fun one to start with. Becca, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So what one of the first questions I want to ask is what your favorite food is and why?
Yeah, so I would love to say that my favorite food was a green leafy salad, but one of my favorite things to do is to make things that are like comfort foods healthier. So one of my favorite foods is I make an eggs Benedict with vegan cultured butter, less egg yolks, and then a plant-based unsweetened milk. And then I do chia pudding with like chia seeds, oats, maca powder, which is a natural sweetener. It also regulates hormones. I'll do some greens, and I sweeten it usually with maple syrup. Then I'll put fruit on top. So when I'm getting like a sugar craving, I'll go for that in a perfect world instead of something not so good for you. Kind of like my motto when it comes to food is to eat like a flexitarian. So I'm not a vegetarian, I'm not a vegan, but I try to eat mostly plants. One quote that Denise put me into contact with was by Michael Pollan, and it's eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So that's how I would define my eating habits. To not be restrictive, but to eat what you want, but within reason, and try to do the best you can.
Wow, that's impressive. Sounds wonderful. And I totally agree with the sentiments. Eat plants, not too much. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So important, not only for our health, but the environment. So speaking of the word food, what else comes to mind?
So when I hear the word food, I think nourishment, and I think medicine. I think organic, whole, real, unprocessed foods. And I most importantly think wild foods. I mean, you can buy all organic produce at the grocery store, but if it's getting shipped all over the country and around the world, it's probably gonna have even like organic approved pesticides on it to keep bugs away and keep it fresh. And you're not gonna have that connection to your local flora that you would otherwise have. So I think medicine.
Excellent. And so what are some of those local sources that you go to close to home?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things that's pretty easy for everybody to access is dandelions. They're really good for your liver. You can eat the greens, you can eat the flowers. Another one is thistle. It's really good for energy. You can blend it into a juice. Yeah, I think those are my top two favorite.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to some dandelion greens coming up soon. If it stops snowing in New Hampshire.
Oh, and mushrooms. Mushrooms are pretty close to my heart. One of my favorite mushrooms to find is the artist's conch. And so I like to talk about it because it's really easy to identify. It grows, it's a polypore, so it grows on trees. And it's, I would say, the easiest polypore to identify, at least around here, because the underneath of it is like an Etch-a-Sketch. So you can, it's like white, and when it's fresh, and you can like use your finger and like draw on it like an Etch-a-Sketch. And that's like a good, like, just general tonic. So you can find some of that, like somehow chop it up into pieces. They can be kind of hard. So usually you want to use a saw, and then just brew that in some tea is one of my favorites.
Is there certain times of year that you find that, or is it usually available year round?
It can be found all year, but in the winter they can get dried out more easy. So I mean, the winter is probably not the greatest time, but if you if you check it out and it looks pretty good and it doesn't look like it's all like rotten and stuff, then it's fine.
Yeah, mushrooms can be scary if you don't know how to identify them. So certainly with your expertise and what you've researched, hopefully you can impart some more of that in the food guide that you're sharing.
Yes.
I think we located some black trumpet mushrooms on a hiking trail over the summer last year, and they were amazing. Um, and apparently they sell for $60 a pound or something.
Yeah, I just found some chaga at this new land that my parents bought, and that sells for like $50 a pound at the health food store. So I don't plan on selling it, but I have a supply for at least about a year, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and that's really a great amount of health benefits there. And it's interesting how hard that is when you're trying to pry it off a tree. You literally need pretty much an axe.
Yeah.
I don't know, a chisel anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful that my dad always carries around a saw. We always have them at the house.
Great. All right. So the next question I have for you, you've been had quite an array of real life work experiences. Can you share with our viewers what work experience was most impactful to you? And on the other side of that coin, what educational experience has been most impactful?
Yeah, so the most impactful work experience was when I lived in Boulder. I worked with this company called Core Foods. They're an organic food company based out of California. And it was a paid internship, but I was a marketing associate for them. And so I did the inventory ordering, and then I did demos for the core bars in 3 different Whole Foods in Boulder County. And just having the company is based out of California, and so they everything, the training was done online. They sent me all the materials. Some of this stuff I had to provide my own, but having that responsibility and just seeing that I could I had my own schedule, and that I could handle that much responsibility and just self-regulation, and then getting to talk to customers about the core bars and how much better they are than Cliff Bars or one of their big competitors. And so there were many times where it was doing my demos and I would see somebody with like a Cliff Bar or Lara Bar, which both have a ton of sugar in them and are really meant for people being on the trail for weeks on end because the sugar is a preservative. And they would, I would talk to them, and then just like there was several times where people would put back the bars that they had and then get the core bars. And just to hear what people wanted and to see what other kinds of things people had in their cart was just, really great market research and just personally an awesome experience.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. And what a great place to do it in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you find that being in that area of the country also maybe had an impact of the experience?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I made the decision to move out there, because I knew that I wanted to go into natural medicine, and that's where a lot of the jobs I was looking at for after graduation were. And so that was definitely a good experience.
That's great, and I'm sure you have some wonderful contacts from that experience.
Yeah.
And how about from the educational side? What do you find has been most impactful for you throughout this journey?
Yeah. So the most the most beneficial educational experience was right before I moved out to Boulder. I took a class called Transpersonal Psychology. It was a graduate course in the Plymouth State Health and Healing Department, and for somebody who's been impatient my whole life, meditated for the first time, and it was a big challenge at first, but also really enlightening. And I realized how much I needed it. Um, and so I also got introduced to Pema Chodron in that class, and her book, When Things Fall Apart. And that book has been really helpful to me. One of the things that she talks about is loving kindness, and just being kind to yourself, and looking at a situation with yourself and thinking, when you're kind of judging yourself and not going easy on yourself, and just thinking, well, what if somebody else was in this situation? How would I treat them? And most of the time, you would be way more understanding, way less judgmental, and just to kind of just to note that. And then when I lived in Boulder, the publisher of her books is Shambhala Classics, and they're out of Boulder. And I lived like blocks away from the Shambhala Center, and I got to go to open meditations there. So, I mean, that class helped me like make meaningful connections to something that is very important to the Boulder community while I lived there, and that was just really magical. And it will stick with me, I think, forever.
Absolutely. And I think we need more of that today, don't we?
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think everyone should read that book. And how great you got to take that master's level class as an undergraduate.
that was awesome.
Um, Wonderful. So just going to look down here to see if we have any questions coming in so I can plan accordingly on our time. No, I just see Becca has put in a copy of her link to her fermented food guide, Food is Medicine book. But remember, if you do have questions that come up while we're going through the interview, please feel free to put them in the chat box so we can get to those.
Yeah, and then so just briefly before we keep going, so I made an ebook for my capstone project, and then the link is in the chat, and it's on my website. And so most of this information that I'm going to be using for the kombucha making demo, and then the information about probiotics is coming from that ebook. And so there's a lot more information to be found in there. And it's about 25 pages, and it's full of content. Dr. McCann and Denise both have recipes in there. There's different easy fermented food recipes to make at home. So you should definitely check that out if you guys have a chance.
Yeah, it's a very well researched guide and a lot of great information in there, Becca. So I commend you for spending the time and your due diligence and getting reliable research and sources, and it's a fabulous ebook. So I think everyone should check that out. All right, so our next question, basically, I can tell you're passionate about the subject, but what inspired you to shift and focus just on fermented foods?
Yeah, so I've been making kombucha now since September, and I have been giving away my scobies to different friends, and I wanted a place. It started with the ebook. I wanted a place where people could go, and when they said, like, you know, how how do I make kombucha? I wanted somewhere for them to be able to access and have it be there and easy. And so fermented foods. I've also kind of known about how important probiotics have been for a while. And I wanted to just dive in and do some more research. I think one of the most important things is that I really believe that you should eat a balanced meal. You should get the proper nutrients, colors in your diet, and probiotics increase the bioavailability of the diet that you're eating. So if you're eating a correct diet, but you're not consuming probiotics, the nutrients and minerals are not going to be able to go to all the places that they need to go unless the probiotics and the prebiotics are there.
Yes, absolutely. And for some folks on the chat today that might not, or on the interview today that might not understand what SCOBY is, could you tell them what that is?
Yeah, so SCOBY is basically like a kombucha starter. It's a living bacteria that I guess the best way I explain to people is it's kind of like a sourdough starter. It's like the life of kombucha. So later I'll be showing you guys what a SCOBY looks like and how it works in the kombucha making process.
Great. Okay. So we know that there's been several health benefits of eating the fermented foods, and you mentioned the pre and probiotics. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between bacterial fermentation and yeast fermentation?
Yeah, so there's a lot of science behind it, but the simple definition is that bacterial fermentation uses lactic acid for energy, and then yeast turns sugar into alcohol. So lactic acid fermentation is going to be the most popular type of bacterial fermentation. And so that's going to be like your kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, and things like that.
Do you have a preference over which fermentation process to use, or do you like to use both?
I haven't actually made sourdough bread yet. I'm gluten-free, and so that's part of it. But in the ebook, one of my good friends makes sourdough regularly, and she included a link that gives you a gluten-free sourdough starter kit. So I didn't know that was possible, and I'm excited to try that out. So I definitely I lean more towards the kombucha and the sauerkraut and things like that.
Yeah, great. Can you share with the viewers the difference between those pre and probiotics? You've touched on it, but do you have anything else that you'd like to share with them and how they kind of work together?
Yeah, so prebiotics are essentially plant fibers, and what the body is unable to break down in those fibers feeds the good bacteria that's living in our gut, and it crowds out the bad. And then probiotics are essentially the good bacteria, and an influx of them will also crowd out the bad bacteria, which the bad bacteria is bacteria that causes disease, basically. And then when you consume them together, you're ensuring proper enzyme function in your body and proper digestion. And so some prebiotic foods, dandelions is one of them. Onions, garlic, endive, burdock, and bananas are some prebiotics.
Yes, and so great right now. We're trying to build our immune systems, and we really, really need to be consuming these foods. And there's so much fiber also, which helps with this whole process and keeping that good bacteria in our gut and our microbiome. So this topic couldn't be any more timely for everyone listening today. Hopefully you embrace some of these tips that Rebecca's sharing with you.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of consuming probiotics versus just taking a probiotic supplement, because and additionally, I mean, if you're consuming plants and vegetables that live around you, you're increasing the biodiversity of those plants around you as well. So I'm a big component of consuming your probiotics. versus taking a probiotic supplement. I think that you can do it all with your diet if you pay close attention.
Yes, that's a great point. Excellent. The more we can definitely get our nutrients from the foods we eat versus supplements is a much better choice. And you did touch on this as far as the research around the chronic health conditions from things like heart disease and diabetes, cancer, and obesity related to inflammation in our body, right? If we're not eating the healthy foods that you're talking about and we're eating processed food, inflammation's a sign that the immune system isn't functioning properly. Can you share any more insight on how probiotics can help regulate and balance a weakened immune system?
Yeah, so research has shown that about 80% of the immune system lives in and around the gut. And inflammation is basically a sign that the immune system is imbalanced. And so probiotics work to balance that and get rid of potential pathogens by supporting a diversified microbiome. And then, so some like common inflammatory, like just generic illnesses are like sinus infections, acne as an inflammatory response, headaches, any kind of pain in the body. And then one other important part of probiotics in the immune system is that they help your body break down sugar. So if you eat a meal high in sugar or high in carbohydrates, and then you take like, a few spoonfuls of sauerkraut or some other sort of probiotic food, it helps your body break down the sugar so that you don't have such a high insulin spike.
Excellent. And it's amazing. I recently heard this statistic and I had to make sure it was true, but we actually make over 200 decisions around the choices that we're going to make about the food we're going to prepare or consume each day, which I just thought was astounding. 200 thoughts go through our mind about these choices. And so it's really important that we make wise decisions and choose these foods that are going to nourish our body and really help heal our body.
Yeah, because it's true. Mostly, if you're putting something in your body, it's essentially either going to help you or hurt you. So paying close attention to what helps you is really important.
Absolutely. Well, excellent. So what do you plan to do with all this great knowledge and education? You're going to be leaving us at Plymouth State, which is sad, but we're also excited for your next adventure and endeavors. So what do you plan to do after you graduate, Becca?
Yeah, so my plan, as of right now, things are a little bit unpredictable right now, but I'm planning on starting my career as a clinical herbalist next January. And so that will be a 3-year program in Colorado, hopefully. And then by the 3rd year, I'll be able to practice as an herbalist and see clients. And then I hope to someday have my own business, but I guess we'll see where things lead after that.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. What a great plan. And I hope that it all works and comes together for you. I know it's a difficult time and you had to be doing online learning here and distant learning for the past several weeks of your last semester. But I believe that we're going to have some good things come out of this uncertainty and it will all work out. So thank you for all your great insight today. And I want to turn it over to you now to show us and demonstrate how to make kombucha.
Yeah, so I put together a whole bunch of props set up here. So this is how you would traditionally get a SCOBY. So here I have a mason jar with this kind of weird looking SCOBY inside. So this is how I originally got my SCOBY. I'll pick it up and show you. It is the most weird, obscure looking thing ever. And so this is the liquid inside is a starter liquid. So you need to make sure you have about 2 cups of that when you get started, because it's basically like the food. And I'll probably say this again, but when you're first starting kombucha, you really need time for your kombucha to get used to its environment. So having more starter liquid to start out is going to help you. If you don't quite have enough, you can supplement it with the brand GT's makes an original like non-flavored kombucha. They're the only brand that I have, at least in my stores around here in New Hampshire, that sells an original unflavored, because the starter liquid has to be that. And you can supplement it with that. And so then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to brew tea. And so I've already done it because it's important that the tea comes to room temperature by the time you go to make your kombucha. And so this is basically half green tea and half black tea. You do 1 teaspoon of tea or 1 tea bag per every cup of water. I use these little tea bags. They're like way bigger than the ones you would just put in a teacup. And I use just bulk tea I get at the health food store because it's way better for the environment. And tea bags often have microplastics and things that you just don't want. And so when I make it, I use half green tea and half black tea. You can, like I said, you can use either, but I use both so that when I give a SCOBY out to somebody, they can use either green or black tea, and it won't take as long for their SCOBY to get used to their new environment because it will be more accustomed to kind of either tea. And then I use coconut sugar. I have the kind that I use right here. You can also use cane sugar. The reason that I use coconut sugar is because coconut sugar is lower on the glycemic index, which is basically how your body interprets sugar when it consumes it. So something higher on the glycemic index is going to spike your blood sugar levels, which is not good for so many different reasons, mostly like mood and irritability, sugar crashes. Everybody's heard of those. So that's why I use coconut sugar. For this size container, mason jar, I use, recipes online are going to tell you to use a cup of sugar. I recommend using that when you first get started, again, to let your SCOBY get used to its new environment, because the sugar is essentially the food that's feeding this weird looking SCOBY. But then now that I've been making it for a while, I use about a 1/2 cup. So I've cut it in half, and that seems to work great. So this is my tea. This is just the tea and the sugar. And then this is my SCOBY and my starter liquid. So I'm just gonna pour all of this in here. And then I'm gonna have to pour some of that out after. But I would put this on top and then put the rubber band on top. And then I'm gonna carefully put this over here. And I would just store that. I usually put it in my cabinet in somewhere that's just not in direct sunlight, and let it sit for 5 days to 2 weeks. It can take anywhere in that time. It could even take longer. If it's not working, just be patient. Once you get the process starting, it's a lot easier. So then after you let it sit for however long it takes, it's gonna look like this. And you're gonna grow a new SCOBY. So this SCOBY is gonna be a little bit smaller. It's not so massive. And so this is my SCOBY on the top here. And so now this is kombucha, but it is unflavored and uncarbonated. So the way that you're gonna carbonate it is with adding more sugar. And this is your opportunity to flavor it. And so I prefer these kind of bottles when I was to carbonate it. So I'm gonna pour this in. First, I'm going to put the SCOBY in my SCOBY hotel. So it's really what these are called. And it's just a jar of SCOBYs. Because I don't need this for when I flavor it and bottle it. So I'm gonna put that in there with the other guys. And then this is what I would give out to people when they want one. I've also read several different things. You can dehydrate them and make kombucha or make SCOBY jerky. So that's one of the things that I want to try because they're so good for you and I don't want them to go to waste. Some people feed them to their dogs. I've read you can put them in smoothies. You can do so many different things. So I'm gonna pour this in here. So I found that these containers work the best for making your kombucha extra fizzy. But at first I didn't go out and buy them because I wanted to use something I already had. So I just used mason jars. Pour it up to about there if you can't see. And then I'm gonna flavor it. So this one I'm gonna do berries in it. And so I basically just muddled berries in this bowl. I have blackberries and raspberries. If I was making this for people, I would not be using my hands, but I'm the only one in my family who drinks kombucha for the most part. My dad drinks it too, but he hasn't had mine yet. So I'm gonna just put these in here. And you can use pretty much whatever you want to flavor it. Anything as long as it has sugar in it. So you can use juice, you can use fruit, you can use fresh pressed juice, you can use bottled juice. So I'm gonna put those in there. And then I'm gonna put in some mint in this one as well. So this mint is from my grandmother's garden. And mint is really good for you as well. It's a digestive, so it's good to have like before or after meals. And I'm literally just gonna push it in there. You don't need a lot of herbs when you go to make kombucha. They're really potent. It really pulls out the flavor of the herbs. So I kind of just use like a pinch. So I'll put that in there. And then I'm gonna do a little piece of vanilla bean. And I'm really only gonna use, you can see like about an inch of it. You don't need a lot. This was actually my mom's idea to try the vanilla bean in it, and it's delicious. So I'm definitely gonna keep doing that. And so I probably gonna add a little bit more sugar in there, just because the berries there wasn't a lot of juice with the berries, and I wanna make sure that it carbonates. So I have this juice that I pressed. It is an orange sweet potato juice. I pressed it with my juicer, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of that on top. Okay, and you don't need a lot of juice either. I probably only put like this much juice in. It's just enough, and it's definitely adds enough flavor, and it carbonates at a perfect amount. Another thing I like to do is to leave room at the top here, especially now that I've been using these containers. They get carbonated so quickly, and if you kind of fill it to the top, it'll just explode everywhere, and you'll lose half of your kombucha. So I kind of give it room to do that on its own, and then I don't have to worry about it. So I'm gonna make one more flavor for you guys. I'm gonna do this one. I'm gonna use all of the fresh pressed juice I made and then some herbs. So again, I'm gonna pour this in. This is just my kombucha that's been sitting for, this one's been sitting for about a week. And so these are if I'm gonna use mason jars to do this process instead of these, which is what I did at first, I'm gonna use these like leak-proof plastic lids. You don't wanna use metal because it screws up the fermentation process. They also make these lids that are white and plastic. They don't work as well, they spill, and they don't carbonate as well, so I would definitely recommend these ones. You can get them at like any hardware store. I'll finish pouring this in. Another thing I used at first is just reused GT's bottles. They work super well. It really doesn't matter. You'll figure it out as you go. You'll figure out what works best for you. All right. And so this one, I'm gonna do this orange sweet potato juice that I made. There's a little bit more of that. And then I also have a this is a turmeric root, ginger root, and lemon juice that I pressed. And so this time I made a bunch of it. This is super potent and really spicy from the ginger. And so I'm gonna put it in the freezer when I'm done, so I can use it the next time I make kombucha. Juicing is a process, so this makes it a little bit easier. And one of my favorite parts about kombucha making is that, so there's acetic acid, alcohol, and lactic acid in kombucha. And so when you put and those are all biopreservatives. So when you make fresh pressed juice, you can see how messy this process gets. When you make fresh pressed juice, it's going to go bad in like a day. It is not going to be, it's not going to be good after like 24 hours, and it's going to lose its nutrient value. But since the kombucha has the biopreservatives in it, it lasts pretty much indefinitely. After time, it'll start to like separate in the bottle if you don't like swirl it around every so often. But it's not going to be bad. It's like not going to make you sick. It's still going to be healthy for you. It might just not taste as good. But I mean, usually I kind of keep this process going and I just drink it before I make the next batch. And so this one, I'm going to add some lemon balm, which is also from my grandmother's garden. She didn't plant this. So I believe that this grows wild. She has it growing everywhere in her yard, and it's amazing. It smells so good. It's heavenly to put in with some chaga tea. It's my new favorite, and it supports your mood, and it's just one of my favorite herbs. So again, I don't need to use that much. And yeah, so now what I'm gonna do is clean up, but also those bottles are gonna sit outside of the fridge, and they can kind of be anywhere. I think it's probably still best to keep them from direct sunlight, but it doesn't matter largely. And it takes roughly 1 to 3 days to carbonate. It's gonna take longer if you're using a mason jar. If you're using a GT's bottle or any other kind of kombucha with a plastic cap, or these are going to be the quickest. And then once it gets bubbly, and you can check it, it's not going to like screw it up or anything. At first I was really worried. You can check it, you can let out some air as you go, and then once it's done, once it's at like that perfect bubbly level, you just put it in the fridge and it slows carbonation. And then say your kombucha is in the fridge and it gets a little flat, you just take it out of the fridge and then leave it out for a day or two, and then it'll get bubbly again. You can put it back in the fridge. So I think that is most of what I have, other than like with all of this stuff, with the sugar content, with where you're storing your kombucha, what you're putting in it, how you're doing it. You learn as you go. So these are all just things that I've found work for me, but you'll figure it out. And once you build up your scobies, if it really doesn't work, which doesn't happen very often, you have backups, and it's just trial and error. So that is mostly what I have for everybody. Aside from when you're washing your kombucha stuff, make sure you don't use antibacterial soap. Use something that's not antibacterial, because kombucha is a bacteria, so it'll mess up the process. So I wash all of my stuff that I use by hand. I use Mrs. Meyer's soap, or we're now buying natural dishwash detergent. So that's all I have for my demo.
That was excellent. So how long did you say it takes those little scobies to form?
It takes like 5 days to 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then once you have them, they just keep growing. And some people will say to use the mother SCOBY, the one that you start with, over and over again, but I don't listen to that. I just make it, and it's good.
Well, it looks amazing, and I love all those fresh berries and herbs that you put in there.
Thank you.
I'm just looking down in the chat box to see we want to open it up to questions. And I know one of the things you had also mentioned was just the antibacterial. Before we get into questions, do you want to comment any more on that? Because I know that was something we had a brief conversation about, and right now everyone's going crazy, with disinfectants, and so.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So I'm not really going to speak for right now where we're in a global pandemic, because I just am not. But generally, when we're not in a global pandemic, I would recommend using against antibacterial soaps because they have a chemical in them called triclosan, which kills everything. And it more specifically kills the weaker bacteria, and it leaves room for the stronger disease-causing bacteria to grow. So it builds a resistance. And the American Medical Association has said that using those kind of antibacterial products, they have said it doesn't help or hurt, is what they've said. And additionally, anybody who's taking antibiotics, it's a similar type of situation. Even if you've taken them once, they kill all of the bacteria in your immune system, and they wipe it out. So it can lead to things like yeast infections, common strep throats, other illnesses, anything like that, especially inflammatory related stuff. So especially people who have been taking antibiotics, that's one time where I might recommend doing a probiotic supplement in addition to consuming them, because your body's going to need extra probiotics to function as normal.
Thank you. That's great.
I see we have a question here. How much kombucha is okay to drink each day? And then Dr. McCain is also saying that regular soap destroys viruses. Does that mean non-antibacterial soap? I'm thinking. Yes. Cool. So a serving of kombucha is 8 ounces. So I mean, I sometimes drink 8, I sometimes drink 16, but I don't usually drink more than that because I think it's redundant and it does have sugar in it. So like anything, I think moderation is important.
So 8 ounces a day?
Yeah, that's like a serving.
Okay.
And then will a SCOBY grow if using decaf tea? I am not sure. I know that there's one company in Boulder, Kyla, you might know, I can't think of it at the top of my head, that is all herbal. Trying to think. I can't think of it, but I know that's an herbal one and there's no caffeine in that. So I'm gonna go with yes, but I don't know how and if it's a different process. And then I'm seeing, do you recommend starting with a SCOBY or making from scratch? I have never made a SCOBY from scratch, Suzanne. I believe that Saoirse has. I think that she was telling me something like that in the collab, but I don't remember. Yeah, we tried. It's easiest to me to just get it from a friend. I'm not familiar with how to start one. I would love to know.
It says that they tried, but were you successful, Suzanne? That's what we want to know.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
No.
You were not successful. Okay.
We've made kombucha a lot, but we got a SCOBY from a friend. So,
Okay.
But I was wondering if how we could start it without having that. But I think we'll just get one.
It looks like Becca has quite a few. She probably could give us each one.
Yeah, I know. I would love to. It's a little bit unfortunate that we're in this pandemic for many reasons, but I mean, I could easily drop it off next time I'm in Plymouth at your door or something like that, I would love to.
It would be sort of like with sourdough starter, you have like the friendship starter. It's sort of like that.
Yeah, cool. It's the kombucha brand in Boulder that is caffeine free is called Rowdy Mermaid. So they're all herbal. So if anybody would like to look into that for a caffeine free kombucha, I think that would be a good place to look.
Can you type that in the chat box, Becca?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, thank you everybody for your questions, and thank you everybody for coming, and thank you, Denise. You've been such a big help for so many different reasons, and I've learned so much from you, and I'm just really grateful that we had the opportunity to do this, despite things being switched up a little bit due to everything going on. But I think it's been great that we've been able to do it this way, because I think people who wouldn't have been able to come into the collab have been able to join in. So this has been wonderful.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a fun experience, and I really appreciate all your work, and really proud of your accomplishments, and looking forward to what's next for you. So it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Any parting comments for Becca? You can put them in the chat box or unmute yourself.
Thanks, Becca. I'm so impressed by everything that you've done.
It's great.
Really good job today. Nice work.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hi, Candy. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you.
Take care.
Can't wait to come visit you in Boulder.
I know, me too. I can't wait to be there.
It's so funny. I was thinking the same thing, Barb.
I'm sure you were.
Fort Collins to Boulder, but yeah, I've been communicating that.
Rowdy Mermaid, huh? I can try Rowdy Mermaid. Yeah, I've always been trying to figure out how to do a decaf kombucha, because I just can't drink that much caffeine after noon. And I love kombucha in the afternoon.
Really wonderful job. I'm so excited to see how the book you finalize on the ebook and everything. So good stuff, huh?
How do we get the book?
What?
How do we get the ebook?
So it's in the chat. It's on my website, but I can also email it to you.
Okay. Cool.
And that's gonna be kind of like a work in progress then. If it's an ebook, you're gonna continue to add to it, right?
Yeah. So I have to put this I'm gonna put this recording on it. I think that will be the last for this one, but I'm already working on another one with one of my friends who is here, Savannah. She's not here anymore, but she's a health coach who I met in Boulder. So we're working on one now that's like simple, easy recipes that are healthier than normal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been exciting and a big inspiration.
Well, you have been an inspiration to all of us too. Great work.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, so much.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Stay safe. Be well.
Ditto.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Stop recording.